Welcome to Plan 9 Crunch. I'm Doug Gibson, and today we have Al Doshna as our guest. Al is a working actor. He's been both in front and behind the camera, and he also is an associate producer for our Ed Wood fans of The Haunted World of Ed Wood, and it's been like a generation since that movie came out. You were the associate producer. You're also, he did the dark, how do you call this, Al? The Dark Kelton?
Kelton's Dark Corner,
Yeah,
starring Paul Marco, kind of a spin-off of films. Yeah.
it was fascinating. And welcome, Al. We're glad to have you. Tell us where you were born.
Yeah, I was born in Yonkers, New York, and lived there. We moved to upstate New York, Syracuse, and I lived there till I was 21. I came out to California, Pasadena specifically, to pursue my acting career, and mostly have been out here ever since.
Well, you've had success in the acting world. I mean, I was talking to you earlier. You were in 1941, which was a John Belushi movie with Dan Aykroyd. You were in Blood Beach, which I saw as like a 14-year-old in the theaters. That movie. That's kind of a cult film. You were in a Kojak episode. And you've also in a lot of low-budget cult films. And one, you showed me some stuff earlier. What is Canaan? Canaan, is it Canaan Land it's called?
Canaan Land, right. That was, that's an independent film feature directed by Richard Rossi. And it's kind of a remake of Elmer Gantry, but also
Really?
based on Billy Sunday and Amy Semple McPherson, and that's basically it.
Now, has that had any distribution yet? Because I'd love to see that movie sometime.
Yes, it's online. You can watch it for free on, I think it's Amazon Prime, but there are a number of places
So
where you
like
can watch
Tubi and things like that, right? Maybe Tubi also, perhaps?
Yeah, right.
Okay. I'm going to watch that.
And yeah, and it's won some awards. Rebecca Holden, who is the female lead for Knight Rider, she's won a couple of acting awards for that, and has a number of cameos like Wonder Woman. What's her? Forgot Wonder Woman's name.
Is that Gal Gadot?
Not Gal Gadot. TV
Linda something. Linda Carter, maybe was it?
Linda Carter.
Yeah.
I feel terrible. Linda Carter. Yes.
Hey,
We have a number of celebrity cameos. Yes.
well, I'm going to look up Canaan Land and watch it tomorrow. But you also had one
I'll
called,
send you a link.
thank you, Lucy and the Lake Monster.
Lucy and the Lake Monster. Yes, that was released last year. The first film. We recently finished shooting the sequel just about a month ago, but that was also directed by Richard Rossi, whom I met, who was by way of Haunted World of Ed Wood, who was an admirer of Ed Wood in our film Haunted World of Ed Wood. So he contacted me, and we've been in touch ever since. He's used me for different things,
Fantastic.
but that's the third.
That's fantastic. I was just saying. Okay. I was just saying that's cool. But I don't want to cut you off. So if you're saying more, go ahead.
Right. We just finished that, and he's still, it's in post-production, but hopefully it'll be out next year. So that it's a sequel to Lucy and the Lake Monsters. Won about 40 awards. Won a Cannes Film Festival award. The original film Lucy and the Lake Monsters, based upon a book by Richard and his associate that he's known for many years, Kelly, and allegedly is some of the royal grandchildren are fans of the book. So
No kidding. Well, let's talk a little bit about the movie that a lot of people know you about because you're associated with it, The Haunted World of Ed Wood. Is it correct that that movie was actually filmed for theaters? Haunted World?
Yes, and it did. Yeah, it did have, we were shooting for the moon. It did have some theatrical release, but it has been in the other media since then, VHS and DVD and so.
Well, it's what I like about that movie, and it's a generation old now, is that most of these people, if not all of these people, have passed away from the Ed Wood
Right.
canon. Maybe
Hmm.
Norman McCarty's son's still alive. So that's maybe about it.
Right.
But we used to have,
Bella Jr.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bela Jr. is still alive too. Oh, I can't wait for
Right.
that new biography, updated biography by Bob Kramer to come out. I wish it would.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But
Right.
I found it. Tell us a little bit about the origin of how that movie came to be and your relationship with it.
Right. Well, I was in a speech club with Crawford John Thomas, who was actually Ed Wood's first producer.
Hmm.
He financed. They were both involved with theater in the Los Angeles area, and it turned out that Crawford asked his stepfather for an advance on his inheritance because he wanted to invest in commercials, which TV was just starting to happen. And Ed Wood was one of his fellow actors, and so Crawford got some money, so he convinced him into shooting a half-hour Western that titled Crossroads of Laredo, and that he was hoping, of course, that they get a distribution deal for. But since we know, Ed Wood didn't have, a lot of training or background in that, so it kind of stayed in Crawford's closet for about 30 odd years till we were in our speech club, the church speech club, and he would ask me occasionally, "How's your acting career going?" And I would tell him a little bit about what's going on. And so he kind of chuckled one day at our service, at our church services, and he kind of chuckled and he said, that Western film that I did, later the director went on to do Bela Lugosi's last movie. And of course, I knew immediately who
Yeah.
that was. So from that point on, he started sending me out. Tell me what we're going to do with this. It's a short film. It doesn't have a soundtrack. It's Ed Wood's first film. What are we going to do with it? So after about 10 years, finally things came together where he was referred to Brett Thompson, who was a filmmaker who had access to funding to put it all together, and as a double feature, Haunted World, interviews with many of the people who are still living, as well as a restoration of Crossroads with a soundtrack by Elvis Presley Jr. And so that's how that came to be. Premiered at the New Art Theater, and it's been kind of more or less the official Ed Wood documentary to this point.
Well, I own the DVD and I've seen Crossroads of Laredo. It's a fascinating film to watch.
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
I wonder if Dolores Fuller had anything to do with the Elvis Presley Jr. soundtrack. I don't know.
Oh yeah, she wrote the songs for um, um, a number of songs for Elvis, and what was his name? Ben Weissman. They both had worked with Elvis, and he was involved with the restoration as well. I forget exactly what the position, but they were both, Dolores and Ben Weissman. They were Elvis people, so they knew, of Elvis Jr., and they brought him in, and that's how it all came together.
Well, I really enjoy watching it. I like the way it's set up where they're all on the stage talking. And I was particularly impressed with Vampira, who seems to have quite a
Right.
bit of charisma when she's talking. Like she's
Right.
pretty good at it, knows how to do these interviews. But what's interesting is she was also a rather eccentric woman in her real life. Like the Ed Wood
Right.
people were unable to pay her because she didn't take their calls when they were making the movie. But she was very
Right.
charismatic in the movie. What are some of your memories of some of the people that were talking during the film?
Well, I was able to become close friends with a number of them. By the way, we had a lot of interesting footage of Vampira talking about James Dean, where it almost became a James Dean documentary, but that wasn't used. But hopefully someday. There was supposed to be a special edition of Haunted World coming out, but so far it hasn't materialized. But she was kind of eccentric, and there was a kind of a funny anecdote what would happen. Not really, but that I would keep the different people updated about what we were doing, when the film was going to be coming out, and whatever. So I was telling people it's going to premiere at the New Art Theater in Los Angeles, and I called Vampire to let her know that we're people are going to be speaking, and Dolores Fuller's going to be there and speaking. He said, "Oh, really, really?" And so we chatted and then hung up, and then I get a call from Brett Thompson, the director. He said, "What did you say to Vampira?" And I said, "Well, I was just telling her about who's going to be there. Dolores, she saw, the people were going to come up to the microphone at the premiere and talk about their experiences and just sort of give a part of the introduction to the film." And she thought she, saw herself as being the star of the film, which in a way she was, but she ended up not coming because she felt, she didn't want the competition from Dolores.
She was an eccentric personality. I've read her biography that came out a couple of years ago by her niece, and it's a fascinating read, by the way. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question, but here are these people who from 1950s, mid-50s to the 80s were basically either barely in the business or not in the business, and they suddenly in the 80s and 90s got a rejuvenation of their not career so much, but of being noticed. How did some people react to that? I'm just wondering.
How did they react to it?
Yeah, were most of them happy to?
Well, yeah. There were a few that weren't didn't really want to get involved, but Paul Marco was delighted, happy. He had worked as a prop man at, I think it was Paramount, and Conrad Brooks, and most of the people were very happy to talk about Ed Wood, and they loved Ed Wood. Ed Wood. Some of the people didn't want to come on board. We contacted a number of people, like Alex Gordon didn't want to be involved because of whatever, what was stuff that's gone on that's been documented, him and Ed Wood. And I would love to have had Phyllis Coates be interviewed. Yeah, because she was in a couple of his films. Sun Still Rises or something. The Sun Still Rises or something. Yeah. Right, and she was doing the Superman thing with Dean Cain at the time, so she was having kind of a career revival. So I assume that she didn't want to, get into the Ed Wood thing, but would love to have had her. But most of the people were very happy to be involved. A few of them, like Vampira and Gregory Walcott and Lyle Talbot, were a little bit hesitant, but Brett talked to them and kind of smoothed things over, and they came on board, and they enjoyed, we had a good time. We all had a good time.
I think Gregory Walcott over time came to terms with the notoriety from that movie, don't you?
Right. There was something he said that, words to the effect of, better to be remembered for something than nothing. But obviously he did have a, pretty impressive career. He's been in a number of films
I was just watching a movie, Man of the East, on one of those stations, that show old movies. And it was Spaghetti Western with Terrence Hill, and Gregory Walcott's in it. I noticed a couple days ago.
Yeah. So that was kind of when he was starting out, and I suppose that he was concerned that it was getting off to a bad start. And then, over time, though, with age, he had kind of mellowed, and he had a lot of good, acting experiences. So I guess he kind of, it kind of came, but he was a very nice person because
Was.
we did, we could talk about the Kelton Star Corner a little
Oh,
bit later if you want,
we
but
will. We will.
the we needed a narrator because long story short, Paul had passed away, and we needed someone to kind of continue with that, and Gregory Walcott was local. Conrad was living back east, so I approached Gregory about that, and he was so nice, and he declined, but it was sort of like I always associated that, with some, with a dating, you ask a girl out there. Some girls who turn you down that it's more positive than the actual date with somebody. And that was kind of the way it was with Gregory. He was a really sweet guy, very, positive. So, my interactions with him were very good.
Well, I like the end of the movie where the people sort of fade away and the lights go out. I thought that was pretty effective at the end when their final comments, or just someone was just looking at you and walking away. I thought that was an effective use of film, and I do think it's probably the most significant of the probably 10 to 15 Ed Wood documentaries out there right now. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Paul Marco, because you developed a friendship with him, right, later in his life. Tell us about that, and also the Dark Kelton series. I don't know if many people know about that.
Right. Yeah. I stayed in touch with a number of the people, Paul Conrad, Norma McCarty, later Dr. Lemon, and many of the people I had developed friendships with, including Paul. And Paul was a lonely person. He enjoyed and appreciated the attention, and he had his memorabilia all over the wall. I'd come down to visit him. He lived in Hollywood, and he had actually had some health problems just prior to the filming of Haunted World of Ed Wood. So he was kind of recovering. He had some things that had come up in his life. So I had stayed in touch with him and visit him from time to time. But then a while had passed, but somebody was working on a book. I think it was Ed Canfield, was wanting, who the author of the Criswell book wanted to eventually come out and talk to Paul and interview him. And so I went down to visit Paul again, and we had one meeting, but then I learned that he had fallen and had to go to the hospital, and he had some severe, injuries that it took a while for him to heal from. And so it just so happened at that time, I was working on a video. I did a video with Vasily Shumov, who is a popular Russian rock star back in Russia, who was staying in the U.S. for a while. I was in a video that he had shot, and he was doing a follow-up that was a tribute to film noir. It was called Dark Corner. And I remember one of the times I visited Paul, he had said, I just feel like I have one more film in me. And so I was thinking, Paul played the, Kelton the cop, and Vasily is doing the Dark Corner video, which is like reenactments of film noir films. And I thought, what if they came together and, Paul, he cast Paul in the video, which he did. They met, and so we did it became Kelton's Dark Corner. So it was like a 15-minute video where I made of still photographs, and Paul was the narrator talking about the dark corners. Older, seasoned cop. Vasily liked that term, the seasoned cop. Not just a little flighty, young cop. Now he's more. So he did that, and Paul was very pleased with it, very happy. We wanted to do several more of them, but sadly, on the day of the shooting of one of the episodes, Paul died of a heart attack. And so we eventually, Vasily was able to put a couple of, well, he saved, a lot of the scenes that he'd shot of Paul. And so he kind of did Bela Lugosi Plan 9 number where he, post after, his passing, he put together 2 more, actually it became 3 more episodes. And we had kind of an homage to Glen or Glenda where we had Paul transition, do an interdimensional transition to Keltonova, the cop, who was played by Shelley Michelle, who was Julia Roberts' stand-in for Pretty Woman.
Wow.
So we thought it was appropriate for Shelley to be, both Julia Roberts and Paul Marco's body double. So there you go.
I got to ask you something. I bought a Blu-ray about a year and a half ago of Revenge of the Dead. Okay.
Yes, right.
And I was lucky to get it because you can't buy it now. But it had something involving Paul Marco. That's not what we're talking about right now, is it?
Yes, right. It is. That has all 4 episodes.
So I watched it. I have watched that. Yes. Okay.
Okay. 4 episodes plus there was another one called Dark Corner Cruiser, which was without Paul, but Vasily did a presentation too. But yes, it came out on the Blu-ray, and so. But Kelton's Dark Corner is also on YouTube too.
Okay, so. I let people know that. But when you were talking about that, I said to myself, I know I've seen this before. I mean, yeah, sure. Because when I get a Blu-ray, I just devour everything on it, and that was on it.
Right.
I want to. Paul Marco, I think, has gotten a bad rap a lot of times because I've been involved in cult films since the 80s. And I read Cult Movies Magazine, Psychotronic. It almost seems like people like to knock on Paul Marco. But you know what? Right. I look at photos that Bob Blackburn shows of Kathy Wood on his Ed Wood Jr. page. And you know who's always there next to her? Paul Marco. So he was definitely a loyal friend, wasn't he? Right.
Well, not only that, and he was a loyal fan, a loyal friend, and he was also a very knowledgeable person because I remember I did a monologue for acting, promotion. And so I showed it to Paul, and he just went down the list of how it was lit and how the way I was standing. And he was he went down the line of how I could have improved it. And he was right. And, he had a lot of knowledge and experience, and, he had that side to him, fun loving, eccentric kind of person, but he was more than just the Kelton persona.
He was a loyal friend, wasn't he? To the Wood.
Right.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Conrad Brooks because you shared with me a Film Facts article that basically you helped with Conrad where he was giving some things about his life, and you had mentioned in the article that there might be a book coming out about Conrad Brooks.
In fact, I have 2. Sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
Yeah, I have. It's basically complete, but it just needs a little bit of polish. But just certain things, the past number of years, I've been very busy and distracted, and so that's 2 the books that I'm trying to finish up for Bear Manor Media, and that one of them is Conrad's memoir. I was able to go down and visit with him shortly before he died and went over some stuff. So that's I Was a Cop in Ed Wood's Plan 9. That's the title of the upcoming book. And I know I've mentioned it a number of times, but it will be coming out in due time.
Well, we look forward to it. I know that Conrad Brooks was basically at the end, he was having a tough time living in a trailer, back then, but he never lost his enthusiasm. Yeah. Could you tell me any recollections you have of your own experiences with Conrad Brooks?
He was, of all the Ed Wood people, I would say he was my best friend of all of them, because he was actually the first person that we met. Because I would go around and contacting people that might have an interest in the Crossroads film, and I'd come in contact with Mike Kopner and Buddy Barnett, and they had been in touch with Conrad, and so they connected both of us, and so Crawford and I had a meeting with Conrad out at the restaurant. I forget what it was called at that time, the Swedish Meatball or something. It was just near the where Conrad was living, and we hit it off pretty much from then. And so I was kind of going through some difficult times, and he would always invite me to come down, and his neighbors would, sit around the pool at his apartment building and chat. And, I would tell him all about stuff that was going on in my life. We would go to a Chinese restaurant across the street. And so, I mean, he knew that I was one of the producers, and so he wanted to stay in, good favor with me. But we also became very good friends, and eventually, he had me in a few of his movies, like we had talked about. Misfit Patrol. I was his assistant, kind of helping him with that. I think I worked about 2 or 3 days with him on that, and a few other ones. So we became good friends, but then he relocated back east to be with his family when, it's for, I suspect, health reasons, but also just financially. So, but we stayed in touch to the very end. And so I was very blessed to know Conrad. And in fact, he was one of the narrators of episode 2 and 3 of Kelton's Star Corner.
Well, I'm going to go back and watch those again this weekend. I envy that you got a chance to meet these people, because I never did. All right. And and I'm just wondering, oh my gosh. Oh, this is sort of self-interest, but if you ever find a place where I can buy a copy of Misfit Patrol, tell me, all right? I'd like to see it. Because I have searched the world over for that movie.
With Conrad. Right, Conrad's daughter. So I'll definitely that. Elaine to Canaan Land. So,
just to go back a little bit, when's the first time you saw Plan 9 from Outer Space?
It was. I think I just saw part of it on a Sunday afternoon movie show when I was living in Syracuse, but I knew about it before because I'd read Famous Monsters magazine. I remember seeing the famous photo of him, of Charles Johnson, Vampira. And also they had a Chiller Theater in New York when I was still living in New York. They had clips from the different movies, and they had Vampira, coming in like that. And so I had seen, bits and pieces of it, but then I saw part of it. But there's also eventually I saw the movie one of the times it was on TV. But there's also an interesting anecdote about well, I love the low budget movies. I love, when I was growing, lived in the New York City area. But one time my brother took me and my mother with him on a business trip to, I think it was Rochester, and we went in a department store, and they had a newsstand, and they had the latest issue of Famous Monsters, or an annual. One of the articles was Joe Dante's 50 worst horror movies of all time. And minute it was a reprint, but I was transfixed by it, and I kept, and one of them, of course, was Plan 9, also Bride of the Monster, and a number of a bunch of others. But then, so I put it down, then I'd go, to the other part of the store with my mother and said, I got to look at that magazine again. It came back, and I was looking anymore. So I say, okay, put it back. One more time. Finally, the guy at the newsstand said, why don't you just buy the magazine? This kid keeps reading, making, and so I was embarrassed. So, but years later, I was able to share that with Joe Dante, and I was kind of gave him, oh, I got to tell you this story about your article, and I'm telling him this, and he's kind of saying, okay, and then I say the part about the the newsstand guy, and then he got a kick out of it, and he saw what I was getting at.
I don't
So,
know how old you are. I'm about to turn 62.
uh-huh,
I didn't really read the monster magazines as a kid. I don't know why. But what got me into
uh-huh,
this stuff was I loved to watch the old Universal films when my parents would let
uh-huh,
me. And did you come up in that
right.
same way where you were watching Bela Lugosi or Boris Karloff on Chiller Theater and stuff like that?
Yes, right. And it was a very unique time
Hmm.
around that time period. Well, when a little before my time, but also, you know, when TV came out, and then the old 30s and 40s horror movies started to be shown on Chiller Theater or whatever, all stations, and then, but it was also the Kennedy years, just when he came into office, but then Marvel Comics came out, Fantastic Four #1, and then a few years later, the Beatles. Of course, Kennedy was assassinated, but a lot of stuff was happening at the time, both in the media and just in the country, and so it was just a fascinating time. And then that's when Famous Monsters came out. That was kind of riding the crest of all that. That kids were watching the movies. Wow, see pictures from Frankenstein meets a Wolfman or whatever. So that's what was happening. And by the way, they're available online on there's some website that has all the issues of Famous Monsters. So,
Well, I think you can
I
find
sent a
some of
link
them
to
on
somebody.
Internet Archive, right? Sometimes the Internet Archive,
Yeah, it could.
I think.
Yeah, that could be.
I
Because
love
I
the.
sent one to somebody.
I remember the
Go
thrill
ahead.
when we were in school. Sometimes they would show these 8-minute adaptations during
Right.
assemblies, and they were now I know they're Castle films, but I used to love to see
Yeah.
those. I mean, they weren't the whole movie, but they were a lot of
Right.
fun. Um, another
Right. Well, that. Go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
you
Listen.
go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, just now, that was the predecessor to Beta and VHS and DVDs, and those were priceless little cut downs of mummies, the Mummy and whatever the Universal films, and so yes, they were, but sometimes they were played at school and like
Yeah,
that. Hmm.
it's funny when I started getting into this kind of stuff in the '90s. You couldn't
Hmm.
find these movies for a little while.
Hmm.
Like I think I bought the Ape
Right.
Man for $30, and it didn't even have a good
Yeah.
print. Now they're
Yeah.
everywhere. So
Yeah. Right.
and then when the bad thing about that is it's sort of killing the people who make them, like Sinister Cinema, and oldies, because people
Right.
don't buy these things because they can watch it on YouTube. But it's just
Right. Yeah.
amazing. If you had told me 30 years ago that I could see Return of the Ape Man whenever I wanted to, I'd have thought you were crazy.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, they're hard to come by, of course, with eBay and Amazon. All um, so they're much more accessible, right? Hmm.
So tell me
And
about.
so, which is,
Oh, go on.
but go ahead.
Tell me
No,
about
no.
some other things you're involved with besides what we've talked about right now. Some of the
No.
films you're proud of and things like that in your career.
Um, well, I, I came out with the hope of, being an actor, which I've done, had peaks and valleys, but um, I also was just naturally good at English. Even when I was in school, I was terrible student, but it's like I couldn't be bad at English if I tried. So that was always a talent that I had. And so once I got into the Ed Wood thing, then I was able to apply that, and then it developed a momentum. And at one point, the lady who was the editor of cult movies asked me to do an article. It said, about anything I wanted to do. So I did one about Philip Jordan, who also ties into the Ed Wood story. He was one of the people we approached about possibly polishing up Crossroads and doing a release of that. So in some ways, most of my success and accomplishment has been with writing, with articles, Film Facts magazine, and I co-wrote the memoir of Richard Anderson, who was $6 Million Man, and I have two books on the back burner that I'm working on, hoping to get out very soon. So as far as film work goes, well, Kelton's Dark Corner was pretty a high point, but got a few things on the back burner that I'm working on. So
well, you have a lot of credits. You may not have made a fortune, but I think you're living the dream for a lot of people. All right, being in this many films and everything.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the woman who took the place of Fay Wray for a few seconds in a film, but who was also a great working actress. Tell us about her, because I read the article about this woman that you wrote.
Right. Right. Pauline Wagner.
Yeah.
And there's one day I was at the library in San Dimas using the computer there. I had a bunch of papers and stuff, and I got up and then I dropped all the papers, and it was a big mess. So I didn't want to stand there with everybody there. So I took the papers over to the windowsill that had a ledge on it, and I just wanted to sort through it. And I noticed that a local paper that was on the table there, that was free paper, and it had a headline about a woman that had appeared in King Kong. And so I picked it up and I read it, and it turned out it was about Pauline Wagner, who had appeared as the body double for Fay Wray in the scenes where they were up on the Empire State Building, because Fay Wray was out of town and they were trying to figure out what are we going to do, because we need to shoot this scene. And so Pauline was not an aspiring actress or had any kind of ambition. She just happened to be the right place, the right time at the Depression. She was a pretty girl, model type, and she got some jobs there and started to support her family that way. And she happened to be walking along at RKO, and then she was approached by a couple of people. Could have been Marion Cooper and the other director. And so she got the job there, and she did a lot of had interactions with a lot of interesting.
Can I say? Yeah. Tell us the Billy Wilder anecdote from your article.
Right. She was, I think it was film King of Jazz, and she was in the makeup room or dressing room, and she was getting dressed up, and then he kind of approached her and put his hands on her in kind of an invasive way, and then she turned around and smacked him, I think it was, and then he took off. And then what was funny, and she didn't see him, I guess he was was related to the Lemleys, and so that's what he was. But then years later, she met up with him, and he was with. She described him as really sexy redheaded, and so they meet him in some social situation. Said. He says to her, I recognize you from somewhere. I don't know where it is, but she didn't remind him of what it was, but that's what happened.
That made me laugh out loud when I read that article. But she had a good career. I like the part where the director tells her, "You'll never be a star, but you'll be working." And she did work until about the time she got married, right? Pretty consistently in the business.
Right. Well, it wasn't so much that she could not have done it if she wanted to, but she really didn't want to. And they advised her not to, because there's just all this stuff that's going on.
Well, she talked about what happened to Judy Garland and things like that, Yeah.
Right. And so, she finally, she got married around, I think it was around 1942. Yeah. And she said, I had enough of it. That's I just want to live a normal life. And then, so she it wasn't until she became the neighbor of this gentleman, Steve Villarino,
Hmm.
who later became her manager, and he said, you should go and talk, to appearances, do appearances, talk about fascinating, life you've had, experiences. So she started to do that, and she lived to about, I think it was about 104.
Yeah.
And but she would make appearances at King Kong screenings and had fun. And she, agreed to let me interview her for Film Facts,
How
and it
old was
was a
she?
very.
How old was she during that interview?
She was just about a month short of
I
100
can't.
years
I
old.
can't
So,
believe how lucid and intelligent she was at the age
uh-huh.
of almost 100 for that interview. It's incredible.
Right, right. Well, she was one of these people that just is very. Would drive and do. But what was funny is that I called her shortly after the interview. I called her up for some reason, right after her birthday. I said, "Hi, how are you doing today?" And she said, "Well, I'm 100 years old now." So, but it was just kind of cute, and that. And it said, I'm sure that's quite an experience that it's, for
Now,
her life
now
too.
is a book on her
Yes.
life on the agenda perhaps sometime too? Maybe.
Yes, right. Both of them. That one is closer to coming together than the Conrad book, just as a matter of time, you're just being able to sort out,
Hmm.
um, having the quality time to sit down and just work out the rough edges. So I'm hoping, in fact, it would be great within the next month even to
Oh,
just get the document off to Ben Omar at Bare Matter Medium. And
she
um,
had a fascinating life, and that was a great article in Film Facts. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed reading it.
thank you.
I,
And I feel like I've been very blessed at being at the right place at the right time and meeting these amazing people.
one
Yeah.
more thing I wanted to mention about Crawford John Thomas. Now, he was a very
Hmm.
young man. He acted with Ed Wood in Blackguard, The Blackguard Returns, right? And he
Right.
had inherited the money, like you said. But when the money ran out, Ed Wood kind of ran out, right? And Crawford
Right.
had to
Right.
deal with a lot of depression at that time, right? How did,
Right. And it was.
yeah, go on,
You
go
go
on.
ahead.
Well, I'm asking, how did he overcome that to the point where 30 years he could be enough to say, hey, I want to continue this, and pay homage to this man and also restore this movie?
Well, he became a Marine, and he had, religious experience. We both eventually, became members of the church. And I think there was a spiritual aspect of it that he kind of got his life together, that he was a little bit more reckless with things. And so he just started living a more normal life. And
Hmm.
it was something that was always in the back of his mind. And I think he was proud of having done it, but I think unfortunately, his stepfather, who gave him the advance, never let him live it down. So it
Oh,
was
I'm
always
sorry.
kind of, and I think psychologically, I could tell the way Crawford would interact with, certain authority figures, that there was something going on there but there was an issue there but somehow he was able to deal. He had a successful a roofing business. He did roofs for people like Barbara Streisand and other celebrities. Can't think of at the moment, but he was he was a family man, had successful but it was always in the back of his mind. But it just happened to come out, when we were in the club together, and he gave his icebreaker speech. It was like a what do you call them? The speeches, the um, Toastmaster type
Hmm. Hmm.
format. So that's interesting. And then so we kind of chatted from time to time, and but that was a fulfillment, and it was kind of a disappointment to him because, see, none of us who worked on Haunted World really had the marketing background to get it out there. And so we were hoping the momentum of the interest, the value of Ed Wood's first film would kind of create a momentum. And eventually it did, have some, some recognition. But he became sick
I
I
know
think
he
it
died soon after,
affected.
didn't he? Yeah, he passed
Yeah,
away.
right. Yeah, right. But since then, it's gotten some recognition. So
Well,
sadly, but mhm,
I
yeah,
applaud his resilience. I applaud his
yes.
ability to come back and present something so wonderful. Um, can I ask you a question? I usually ask people this. What's your favorite Ed Wood movie?
I think it's Glenn or Glenda,
Glenn or Glenda? Okay.
because I love Plan 9, but there's just something about, and I was just reading the Will Sloan book, and I
Yeah, I did
think he
too.
hit on it, that there's something about that it just hits on everything. It has Bela Lugosi as God, and you have, the Lyle Talbot as the police detective, and the Timothy Farrell as a counselor, and it's all sort of, to me, it's kind of like the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that it touches on all of the things that we aspects of things we have to deal with, just the spiritual side, but also the practical side of just living day to day and all these crazy things that happen. And he, within his limitations as a filmmaker and as a he spoke for people. He recognized what was happening in the world, and he conveyed that in that movie. And
I
just
think you
I
may
thought it was very
you
interesting.
make a good point. By the way, have you read a book called Drowning with the Devil: A Spiritual Biography of Ed Wood by Angel Scott?
Actually, I have it right under the camera. I started reading it. Sorry if Angel is watching this. I'm working on it. I've just been a little busy.
No, I'm
Thank
not. You
you
don't
for
have to
sending it to me.
apologize.
Angel Scott. Angel.
We did interview her several months ago, so
Yeah.
it's logged if you want to watch
Uh-huh.
it. But the reason I brought
Yes.
that up was not to plug my video podcast. It was that I
Right.
learned that after Plan 9, Lynn Lemon counseled Ed for a
Uh-huh.
few years. I found that very
Yes.
interesting. Yeah,
Right. He talked a little bit about that in
in the
um
movie, yeah.
yeah, movie. Yeah, right. So, and I also did an interview with Lynn for Film Facts, but Lynn had a hard time of it in life because he, the Plan 9 thing fell through, and then I came to know him a little bit before he died. I interviewed him, and I was expecting to have it published in our church newsletter, but then it was turned down at the last time, and then he had a stroke, and then he died. But then it ended up in Film Facts. So
What issue
I,
of Film Facts do you know?
I'll get that to you. Canaan Land, Paul, Kelton the cop, and
Okay.
Lynn Lemon.
Well,
I'll
when you
get it
tell
to you.
me, I will put in the comments of the YouTube page what issue that is.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we've enjoyed this. It's been fantastic talking to you. I really enjoy it
Uh-huh.
because you
Uh-huh.
actually interacted with people that I think about all the time. All right.
Right. Uh-huh.
And when I was a kid in
Uh-huh.
high school, no, junior high, eighth grade, I
Uh-huh.
wrote a term paper on Bela Lugosi, and I thought of calling Ed Wood. And I even saw
Uh-huh.
in the phone book. I swear I saw Edward, but I didn't.
Uh-huh.
I didn't call
Right.
him. I didn't call him. He would have been alive because I just thought
Mm-hmm.
I don't need this, for the paper. But that's a regret I have.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have talked to Ed Wood or something. He's,
Right. Well, his spirit lives on
yeah, exactly,
with. Well,
exactly.
but I met him either. Some of my best friends later became, and there's another gentleman called named Ewing Lucky Brown, who was
Yeah.
one of the last surviving adult cast members of Shane that we stay in touch. And he's another one. I have his memoir too. I have several on the back burner.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
anyway, yeah, but Ed Wood was a very special person. One other thing I want to say, as far as
Sure.
Haunted World of Ed Wood, our church was, relatively traditional and kind of conservative, but we also, that film, we interacted with people of the, LGBT community, and we all sat around, we talked as adults, and we had that common thread that Ed Wood was, part of all of us, everybody there, and there was a cohesiveness, and it shows that we don't need to be at each other's throats.
No, we don't.
We could, Christ said, the poor you'll always have with you. And in the same way, we have our zones of influence, and we don't need to, we have to stay within those and do what we can, and not, again, be at each other's throats, because people are sicking us on each other. And so, but I think that I think I'm very proud that Haunted World of Ed Wood, if anybody has any doubt about that, watch Haunted World of Ed Wood.
It's on YouTube right now. And of course, you can buy DVDs with it on, but it is on YouTube. I watched it twice in the last week. Okay, but I watched it many times before.
Right.
I want to thank you for the time, and you keep us informed on anything going on in your career. Okay, we want to know.
Okay.
And I have to say this little spiel. We're
Thank
Plan
you.
9 Crunch. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. We're on TikTok.
Okay.
We're on Facebook
Okay.
at Plan 9 Crunch Podcast and Blog. And I don't know if you've ever seen our traditional blog where we've reviewed a lot of movies. It's called plan9crunch.com. And we reviewed Glenn or Glinda on that too. But anyways, thank you very much, Al Doshna. And that's a wrap.